Thank you so much for supporting the channel. I'm unable to use my own voice at the moment, so for now I'll be narrating with a premium AI voice. I appreciate your understanding and support.
Chapter 4031 Verdant Host, Part 2. Turning so many trees into quasi-plant folk did more than give them the ability to fight. The Treantling's conscience was now developed to the point that they felt fear, rage, and pain in the same way as any member of the 5 races would. Each one of the green colossi was several decades old, yet they had never moved, never struggled, and never practiced magic or martial arts. Their combat ability was limited, and there was no guarantee they would make it back to the Tron Woods. Even worse, giving the trees a conscience also meant giving them the ability to think and choose for themselves. They had no obligation towards Lotho and no reason to obey his commands. Yet they chose to because the uppers had invaded their home. The corrupted divine beasts had set the woods ablaze, terrified the small creatures that had nested on the trees' trunks, and killed many Lucians they knew. The trees didn't understand why the humans cut them down from time to time, but they knew there was no malice in it. The Lucians did it with care, never taking more than they needed and always planting a new tree to replace the one they took away. It was thanks to that practice that the borders of the Tron Woods hadn't moved since even the oldest among the trees could remember. It wasn't much, but in the fierce battle for survival in which plants engaged every day, it was an unusual act of kindness. Orpal had stomped over Roz's fields, making the crops scream their silent cries of agony. His uppers had filled the air with the smell of burning wood, tearing down the city that the trees had watched grow and thrive over the years like one of their own. The plants that lived deeper inside the woods under the protection of the kings had ignored Lotho's call. They had no care for what happened to a place they perceived as a distant land and creatures who were alien to them. The old birches and oaks that stood nearby Celia's house instead, and all those who were familiar with the small, weak humans and considered them akin to young saplings, had left the Great Mother's warm embrace to face the invaders. What the Lindworm-upper was about to finish a wounded hydra at his feet when something heavy tackled his left side, almost pushing him off balance. The Treantling oak was as tall as the violet-cored divine beast in its natural form, but growing feet and arms required rearranging its mass and lowering its height. On top of that, the slender tree weighed much less than the bulky colossus. The upper snarled, grabbing the Treantling with his clawed hand and opening deep cracks in its thick bark. The oak bellowed in pain but didn't let go. Its gnarly feet grew deep roots that dug into the ground, absorbing the water and nutrients it needed to restore its wounded body. The healing abilities of the plant folk required no world energy and were unaffected by Frost's soul. Also, the roots grounded the Treantling to the point that the upper couldn't move an inch. The hydra was so close yet unreachable. Small vines sprouted from the hands of the oak, searching for the gaps in the enemy's armor through which pierce into his flesh. "Why don't you go down?" The lindworm hammered at the Treantling with the pommel of his sword, the creature too close for the blade to be effective. "Let me go, you useless bastard." When that didn't work, the upper dug his claws into the Treantling and drained its life force with vampiric touch. The tree yowled as its leaves withered and fell but didn't break its hold. "I'm sorry." The hydra had recovered enough to bite the upper with his heads and inject his acidic venom. That and a Tier 4 spirit spell, Shooting Lance, opened a deep hole in the lindworm's chest. "Do your worst, lizard," the upper snarled, feeling his flesh and bones reknit themselves as fast as the acid dissolved them. "As long as Kindle here heals, so do I." A second Treantling heard him and agreed with him. The birch planted its massive fist into the still-open wound from Shooting Lance and spread its tendrils like a disease, squashing everything that even remotely felt like an organ. The upper died, and his corpse reverted to the much smaller form of an emperor beast. "Thanks," the hydra said while panting heavily. "Can you?" The wounded oak drained the lindworm's corpse to regain the lost strength while the birch searched for a new opponent. "Carry me to safety? Guess not." The hydra sighed, using a floating spirit spell to escape Frost Soul's crippling effects. The trees didn't understand words, only the mission mattered to them. All across Lucia, the Treantlings stabbed uppers, dragged them down with sheer numbers and weight, and ruined Orpal's plan. He had brought enough of his corrupted divine beasts to defeat an army, but he hadn't accounted for plant folk. The death and destruction the uppers had created were fertile ground for the Treentlings, and Frost's soul negated the greatest advantage of true mages over plant folk, the ability to use all elements. "Don't worry about those weeds," Knight said. "They are heavy and bothersome but pose no danger to our plan. They are much weaker than real Treentlings since they don't know the first thing about magic." "True," Orpal nodded. "Time to change the rules of the game." He raised his spear, thorn, above his head and released a blinding radiance. The members of the council raised their spirit barriers and took cover, afraid that the undead king might be about to unleash another barrage of shattered moon. Yet nothing happened. The brilliance quickly faded and the battlefield devolved into chaos again. "Are you all right, kid?" Adjutor asked, feeling his skin crawl for some reason. "I could be better, but I'll live." Invigoration had mended most of Uffil's deep wounds, but even barrels of nutrient potions weren't enough to restore the flesh and blood he had lost. "Where's Firewall?" At the heart of this mess, the Drake pointed at the center of Lucia. Firewall stood there at the forefront of the Hydra troops' arrow-tip formation. With her royal fortress armor and her mace, Dreamweaver, she was the only one who could hold the line. The Davros of her equipment and the life maelstrom it stored were unaffected by the upper's bloodline abilities and allowed her to overpower the bigger and heavier corrupted divine beasts. Yet Firewall couldn't win alone. The best she could do was to cover the retreat of the wounded and secure at least one side of the Mage Association. She had fought non-stop ever since pushing Orpal back, never taking a moment to rest or restore her dwindling strength. "How long before the reinforcements arrive?" Falul stomped her way to the backline, the first known position unaffected by Frost's soul. "Lotho's Treentlings are a one-trick pony. They can buy us some time, but they can't win this battle for us. We need some heavy hitters." "Any moment now," the Drake checked his communication amulet. "The council forces are stretched thin, but the moment they heard Narchat is here, they put Lucia on top of the list." Chapter 4032 Setup Part 1. "Let's hope that the council's any moment now is not my too late and a quarter." Falul took deep breaths, feeling her mana core and body heal. "If it keeps up like this, we're going to lose. We need." A second flash of light came out of Thorn, cutting Falul short and Fila asunder. The behemoth's two halves fell to the ground in front of Ragu's horrified gaze. The blast of shattered moon had missed the human representative only because the massive armored body of her late friend eclipsed her. "Bring them all down!" Orpal shapeshifted into his full Vertilac form, covering Thorn and Moonlight in black crystals that formed respectively a divine beast-sized spear and armor. "Give them no quarter or mercy." Those words made no sense to humans, beasts, and fae alike. Mercy wasn't something anyone in the dead king's army possessed, so they couldn't grant it to others. The uppers had fought like the savage monsters they were since the beginning, trampling over innocents just because they could. There was no way they could do any worse. That was what everyone thought, and they were wrong. In the blink of an eye, countless lights erupted all across Lucia and hundreds more died. Awakened fared no better than regular humans, and the collapsing hydras buried many people under their corpses. "You bastard!" Warm tears streaked down Ragu's eyes as she fought for her life, conjuring barrier arrays, warps, and Tier 5 spells at the same time. "You cheating son of a syphilitic whore." "Thanks," Orpal laughed. "By offending my heartless mother, you give me the kindest compliment I could ask for." He gave the human representative a polite nod before pointing Thorn at her. Ragu reacted in the nick of time, warping away before the shattered moon vaporized everything in 100 meters around her. The two uppers attacking her weren't so lucky, but the dead king didn't care. "Are you ready for a real battle, little kindling?" Acton laughed as he unleashed a combination of the Tier 5 spells, Raging Sun and Duskwind, upon the plant representative. The first spell created an artificial volcanic eruption while the second conjured a darkness-filled tornado. The final result was a fiery explosion large enough to cover 2 city blocks that drained the life out of everything it touched. Lotho was sent flying despite his bulk, while his many limbs withered and turned into ashes. "Don't bother answering, I don't care." The bastet hurled a river of origin flames that drowned the treant while neutralizing the pummeling of the treantlings swarming him with mana body. The golden light made Acton impervious to both magical and physical attacks, allowing him to recklessly charge forward, uncaring for the sea of quasi-plant folk blocking his path. "I'd say I'm sorry about this, but only because I'm told I'm a pathological liar." Jorel bolted from one point of the battlefield to another, squashing heads with his twin maces and unleashing a hail of spells on the stupefied hydras. A few of them died, but the storm griffin didn't care. He left them in such a bad condition that even the weakest among the uppers could deal the final blow. "Meln, you son of a Xenagrosh," managed to stop herself just in time to spare Alina from further slander. "Everyone, beware." The first flash signaled the uppers to start preparing their spells and the second to stop using Frost Soul. "He set us up from the start." Her analysis was indeed correct. Knowing about Frost Soul, the Awakened had prepared and kept at the ready only the mana-expensive spirit spells they thought would be the most useful. Without access to the world energy for invigoration, the Awakened couldn't recover their strength and had to make every spark of mana count. The uppers had exploited such a reasonable strategy and had prepared several mana-cheap elemental spells right upon the first flash. After the second, they had unleashed those spells and used those precious moments of confusion to use invigoration while their enemies burned, withered, and froze. Now the hydras, the humans, and the emperor beasts were weaker than ever, while the surviving uppers were back to their full strength. Before the allied forces could use invigoration as well, the corrupted divine beasts launched a savage offensive. Surprise! Orpal downed Xenagrosh again, pinning her to the ground with Shattered Moon before moving the energy beam onto Firwall for a second, and then Falul. It would have taken too long to kill the Elder Hydra with the blade spell, and time was of the essence. Orpal aimed Shattered Moon at the backline, mowing down the wounded and preparing for the final act of his plan. Without Firwall, the battle formation of the Hydras collapsed quickly, and the corrupted divine beasts piled up on her in the hope of killing her first and imprinting her equipment before any other upper could. Fuck! Adjatar activated the defensive arrays of the field hospital just to see them collapse faster than he could repair them. The collapsed moon punched through the barriers and moved towards Falul almost unimpeded. Almost. The brief delay provided by the magical formations was enough for Adjatar to activate Spirit Fusion and form a concentric wall of Tier 5 spirit spells in front of the Hydra. Spirit Fusion allowed Adjatar to cast spells with the speed of thought and to weave one into the next to amplify their effects, making the final result much greater than the sum of the single parts. Sadly, it came at a price. The spirit magic that Adjatar employed fed off his body. To achieve such power, Spirit Fusion required converting one's mass into pure mana and consuming it to conjure spells while in that state. Adjatar stopped the blast of Shattered Moon, but only because it didn't last. The effort forced the Drake back into his physical form, but he came out of Spirit Fusion as if he had fasted for weeks and had no water for days. He was all skin and bones, his sapphire eyes red due to the broken capillaries. Adjatar tried to speak, but only a rattle escaped his throat. He tried to gesture for Falul to run, but his wizened fingers trembled uncontrollably. "Well, it's been a pleasure, Xenagrosh." Jorel landed like a comet, dealing a double blow of his twin maces on the regenerating form of the shadow dragon. "You were really strong for someone my age, but I expected much better from Ligain's lost daughter." He avoided using light spells she would feed upon and unleashed a barrage of darkness spells. "I heard a lot about you, first Abomination, then Eldritch, then Lapdog of the Monster or something. I guess you wouldn't have lasted for so long against me if not for Frost Soul crippling my strength. Without spirit magic or invigoration, even an Eldritch-like doesn't stand a chance against someone like me." Zorith's troll side absorbed over half of the darkness element, converting it into energy that the Eldritch side could feed off as well. Yet it wasn't enough to turn the tables. Shattered Moon had blown the bookworm armor open and shattered both the maw and the skull. The artifacts were already self-repairing, but they wouldn't make it in time before the Storm Griffin finished her off. Chapter 4033 Setup Part 2. Seeing that neither magic nor adamant could stop the eldritch troll from regenerating, Jorl changed approach. He conjured Fire Soul, setting the world energy Xenogrosh's body was desperately absorbing ablaze. The corrupted flames burned the shadow dragon's flesh, mana, and equipment from within. The troll's side weakness to fire only sped up the process, inflicting Zorith pain as she had never experienced before. Interesting, Jorl nodded. Fire Soul seems to be a natural anti-abomination weapon. This will be useful when dealing with Verhin again. I doubt it. A searing tidal wave crashed from the sky upon Jorl, sending him reeling in agony. You mongrels have spilled enough blood of Ligaen already. You won't spill more on my watch. Gerslak, the patriarch of the Wyvern bloodline, led the dive of his murder upon the Storm Griffin. The Wyverns rained origin flames and spells on Jorl's back, treating him with the honor and respect he deserved. Acton fared no better. The Wyverns rescued Lotho and brought Ragu to safety while their main force bombarded the uppers from the sky. Come and fight me, you lizzes, the Bastet roared, but his origin flames clashed against the Wyverns and exploded in his face, eating at his mana body. The Wyverns didn't dare enter the range of his powerful spear, Ashen Dread. They strafed at the Bastet with spells in a hit-and-run tactic, hurting him faster than he could heal. This is bad, Orpal sighed. I didn't factor for so many meddlers. I need to rush things a bit. A swing of thorn turned Lisa into a pulp with the mere air pressure it generated. Mom, Rizzle cried, his mind refusing to believe the nightmare had started again, yet unable to avert his eyes from Lisa's gory remains. I told you this would happen, but you didn't listen. Now you have until I count to 3 to tell me where Luca is. Uphil charged at the dead king and unleashed 7 spirit spells, each carrying the full power of his mana core. Another burst of shattered moon blasted them to sparkles of light and the 7-headed dragon away. After that, well, I won't kill you, but I'll find a way to make you even more miserable. A swing of thorn severed one of Falul's heads. She unleashed a barrage of 6 tier 5 spirit spells, but shattered moon punched through them and vaporized another head. 2. The spear pierced deep into Falul's chest, puncturing her lungs and making her unable to breathe. And 3. A Silverwing's annihilation hit Orpal square in the chest, where his mage tower was embedded in his crystal armor. He managed to save Moonlight from destruction only by shielding the steed with Shattered Moon and using the rest of the blade spell to counter the annihilation. Don't die on me, child, Urgak, the patriarch of the fire dragons, said. I would never forgive you if you did. Invigoration healed the wounds before Falul's core cracked, bringing her back from the dead. Another fire dragon poured a stream of nutrients down Ajatar's throat, using his breathing technique to help the Drake metabolize them quickly. Fire dragons? Orpal rode the conflicting energies of the annihilation and the shattered moon to get away from Lucia at supersonic speed. We already got what we wanted. There is no point in staying here and fighting against a patriarch and his honor guard. Knight pointed at the many worms surrounding Urgak. They are no father or champion of fire, but they are the next best thing. I agree, Luca is not here and there's nothing to gain from this battle. We've already humiliated the council. One day we'll take care of the brood as well, Orpal replied as a greed of fire dragons appeared on the horizon, shining upon Lucia with the intensity of an early dawn. But that day is not today. A third flash of light signaled the end of the fight. Jorl couldn't defeat the Wyverns, but they couldn't stop him from running away either. Acton didn't even wait for the signal, bolting the moment victory was no longer cert. Don't let that bastard warp, Urgak yelled, for our fallen brood. For our fallen brood, the fire dragons warped around the dead king and conjured a space-compressing array. Thanks for the warm welcome, but I have to go. Orpal tapped into Moonlight, using the power of his steed to overcome the mana of several worms and warp away despite the magical formation. The fire dragons activated their bloodline ability, Primal Spark, and set the entire sky above Lucia ablaze with origin flames. It failed to stop the dead king from escaping but killed the uppers that had yet to warp away. Time to go? Jorl grabbed Acton by the scruff of his neck and bolted away at a speed that no wingless creature without life maelstrom could match. The wyverns unleashed a hail of spirit spells on the fleeing divine beasts, but Jorel blocked everything by using the mana body-infused bastet like a living shield. "Hey, that hurts," Acton yelled as chunks of his armor and underlying flesh burst into pieces. "It will hurt much more if they catch us," Jorel replied. He took a home stone from an internal pocket of his armor and used it to quickly warp at a great distance. The artifact already contained the coordinates of the exit point and was connected to an identical home stone that served as a beacon. Salinoth, the Ring of Space, had prepared enough for anyone and waited for them on the other side, ready to shatter the home stone beacon the moment Orpal gave him the signal. Dozens of dimensional passages opened in the middle of the city as the corrupted divine beasts disappeared one after another. The members of the Awakened Council and the Hydras were too busy saving their dying comrades to care about the uppers. "Is there a dimensional mage among us?" Firewall yelled, her 7 heads searching around for a raised hand or any sign of acknowledgement. She was still recovering from her own wounds but was unwilling to let the dead king and his army off so easily. Yet no answer came, so she pulled her communication amulet out and counted the runes left on its surface to assess the casualties. "Uffil is still alive, someone look for him, he may need help." Firewall noticed that the contact rune of the 7-headed dragon was still available and sighed in relief. "No need to look for me, I'm right here," Uffil replied, dragging his left foot and holding his right arm as he limped forward, leaving a river of blood in his wake. The membrane covering his wings was gone, leaving the bones exposed, and 5 of his necks were reduced to charred stumps. His adamant armor was in ruin as much as his body, but it was already rebuilding itself. "I managed to blink away at the last second, but part of Narchat's blade spell followed me through the blink. I survived only because the dimensional passage lasted a fraction of a second. Any longer and I would have joined our brethren in death." Uffil lowered his gaze, ashamed of having failed to stop the dead king from claiming his prize. "Don't apologize for avoiding a pointless death." Firewall handed him a barrel filled with nutrient potions. "There is no cowardice in retreat, not when there was nothing your presence could achieve." Chapter 40, 34 Peas in a Pod, Part 1. With the end of the battle, it took the mages of the associations seconds to put out the fires and minutes to rescue those trapped under the rubble of the collapsed buildings. Most Lucians trampled by the uppers had died at the beginning of the attack, but several people were still alive. When the mages and the awakened pulled the survivors out of the ruins of their destroyed homes, their joy was short-lived. Many members of their families were dead, and so were their neighbors and friends. The walls of the still-standing buildings of Lucia were slick with blood, and the roads were littered with dead bodies. The stench of burned meat wafted through the air, forming a layer of fat on the tongues of the survivors that tasted of death. Some people fainted, and a few puked their guts out. Most of them just cried, incapable of expressing with words the pain from losing everything and almost everyone that made their life worth living. Salark answered Lith's call first, returning from her hunt and ensuring the safety of his family. As soon as she conjured a fake home to replace the tower, Lith and Solus returned to Lucia. The tower warped to the clearing in the Tron Woods in case they needed its power, but Lith emerged from the warp gate in the barn of his house to not raise suspicions. He remained flabbergasted seeing that the arrays of the Verhin house were still at full power. Only when he turned towards Rizzle's house did he notice the trail of destruction coming from Lucia. "Solus status report," he asked. Lith had returned via the official channels to leave a paper trail while Solus controlled the tower from the woods. "The watchtower can't locate the energy signature of uppers and there is no sign of Meln," she replied. "Whatever happened here, we're too late." The mana geyser was too far away to enhance Lith's magical and physical prowess, but from there, the tower could monitor the situation and fire spells if necessary. "How many dead?" he asked, warping straight to Lucia and conjuring as many demons as he could to help with the rescue operations. "Too many," she said while sifting through the reports coming on their amulets from across the Griffin Kingdom. "I mean, among our friends." Lith didn't want to sound callous and anger Solus but couldn't find a delicate way to ask that question. A few, soulless, stared at the empty spaces on their communication amulets, refusing to elaborate further. Lith understood why the moment he walked out of the warp steps. Even during the War of the Griffins, he had rarely seen so much wanton destruction. There was almost no method to it, only the cruel indifference of giants stepping on the lives of mortal men. He noticed the disappearance of the Temple of the Allfather first. The absence of its tall statues and main building was hard to miss. Then his eyes wandered to Zekel's house, finding no trace of it. He was about to yell for the blacksmith when he recognized Fila and Ragu. The human representative stood still without making a sound, only the trembling of her shoulders betrayed her distress. The two halves of the behemoth's corpse had crushed several houses under their weight, but Lith didn't care about the fate of their occupants. He couldn't stop staring at one of Fila's eyes that seemed to look at him. There was no rage or accusation in her glassy gaze. She seemed peaceful, maybe a bit surprised to see him. Lith instinctively activated life vision, finding no trace of life force or of her mana core left. Fila had died protecting his home and people, and that hurt more than any cruel word or blow could. "Can you look for her with your black chains, please?" Ragu's voice sounded deadpan. "I need to talk to her one last time. I need to know if there's something I can do to compensate Fila's family for her sacrifice." Lith nodded and activated Call of the Void. His black chains scoured Lucia and found many angry souls, but the behemoth was not among them. He left them alone, unwilling to exacerbate the grief of their living relatives while their wounds were still fresh. Then Lith let the chains move past Lucia and throughout the kingdom, but to no avail. Fila the behemoth was gone and there was nothing he could do about it. "I'm sorry," Lith shook his head, "she's at peace now." "That's the first good news of this shitty day." Ragu had a hard time associating the word peace with Fila's mangled corpse, but she knew there was nothing that recriminations would achieve. "Where were you all this time, Verhin?" She turned toward Lith, her eyes were empty, but the embers of fury sparked from her voice. "Where were you while we bled and died for your hometown?" "In the Blood Desert?" Lith knew that the truth would be of little consolation to the bereaved, but it was all he had to offer. Meln sprung a surprise attack against the desert as well. He lured Salark away and sent a few of his uppers after me. They didn't try to kill me so much as to stall for time and keep me from alerting Grandma of what was happening. I came here as soon as I could. "I see." A part of Ragu didn't trust his words and wanted to blame Lith for what had happened, but the reports flooding from the Blood Desert brooked no argument. "I'd leave if I were you, Verhin. There's nothing good that your presence can achieve." Verhin, hearing that name, snapped many people out of their daze. "He's here?" asked a man rocking the corpse of his daughter. "Is this your fault?" a woman asked while staring at him with wide, uncomprehending eyes. Her clothes were bloody and tattered, but she didn't seem to notice. Her hair was caked with dirt and soot, her arms still twisted at unnatural angles as a healing spell put them back together with pops and cracks. "Are you the reason my house is destroyed and my family is dead?" She spoke with a flat voice, as if she were a puppet in the hands of a poor ventriloquist. Yet her words broke the dam of shock and grief that froze many Lucians in place. They repeated her questions, outrage and fury burned higher with every voice that joined the chorus. Lith didn't know what to say. For the first time in his life, no lie came to his mind that could explain what had just happened. Anything he would say, no matter if true, false, or something in between, would be of no consolation. "I need to leave before it's too late," he thought. "Staying is the cowardly move. I'm an awakened and a divine beast at that. If I let them hit me to vent their rage, they are the only ones who are going to get hurt. It would add insult to their already grievous injury." The surviving Lucians crowded Lith from every side. Their voices quickly rose in an angry din of blame and insults. Chapter 40, 35 Peas in a Pod Part 2. Lith stood in the middle of the crowd, without saying anything to refute their slander or explain his actions. "I'll let them say their piece and leave the moment things get physical," he thought. "I owe them that much." "Lith is innocent." Those three preposterous words silenced the mob like a sudden hush spell. Rizzle stepped forward, needing Falul's help to stand. There was no visible wound on his body, but he moved like a man carrying the weight of Magur on his shoulders. Narchat didn't come to Lucia for him, he didn't bring all this chaos and destruction upon us to hurt Lith. Narchat came for me, I'm the only one you have to blame. This is all my fault. Rizzle clenched his hands hard, holding small pieces of worn-out fabric that were all he had left of his parents. Why would he do that? Much to everyone's surprise, Lith was the one who asked the question. The Lucians still hated his guts, finding it more plausible that the attack on Lucia was just another of the dead king's ploys to hurt his hated brother, but they nodded in agreement. Because I'm the one who betrayed Meln first. Warm tears streaked down Rizzle's face, yet his voice remained steady. I'm the reason your family disowned your brother, Lith, isn't it obvious? Before Lith could stop him, Rizzle recounted the events of the day when he had agreed to help Orpal teach a lesson to his younger brother. Rizzle skipped the details of the beating he had suffered from Lith, moving straight to his confession to his father first and then to the village chief. Now I'm like Meln. Rizzle burst into a deranged, mirthless laughter. I have no family and everyone hates me, we're two peas in a pod. The crowd turned on him with the speed and violence of a tide. They spat, cursed, and punched at him, but Rizzle took it all without trying to defend himself. He was in too much pain to care and welcomed death with open arms. Enough. Falul, however, was of a different opinion and shielded him with a spirit barrier. How can you blame this man for the actions of a raving lunatic? Don't you understand that you're doing exactly what the dead king wants? The crowd stopped, but not because they had seen reason. Something had frozen them on the spot, keeping them from moving a single finger. She's right, Ragu shook her head. This is no one but Meln Narchat's fault. Today he attacked the Griffin Kingdom and the Blood Desert to further his plans of conquest. Countless people died all across Garland for his madness. She spoke to the Lucians, but also to herself. Even if you kill this Rizzle guy, nothing will change. The dead will stay dead and the dead king will return to Lucia anyway. He will not stop until we all grovel to his feet or someone puts him down like the rabid dog he is. Ragu dispelled her magical formation, letting go of the Lucians. They stared at her, Lith, and Rizzle with eyes full of pain, desperately needing someone to blame for their misfortune. Giera Continent, ruined city of Telekit at the same time. It was still night in Lucia, but the sun was already high in the sky in Giera. Orpal felt night's powers fade as the abundant light element replaced the darkness flooding her crystal, yet he could not stop smiling. The mission in Lucia was a complete success, he said. I killed those I wanted to kill, I destroyed everything that really mattered, and those pompous fools of the Awakened Council failed to stop me. Heck, if not for those fire dragons, I could have taken my time and killed 3 council representatives here and there. The only sour note is that I have no idea where to find Luca, but that's a minor inconvenience in the great scheme of things. How can he be so proud of devastating a helpless city and killing ants? Jorl thought, making sure that his face showed nothing of the spite he felt for his so-called leader. I would get it if he conquered the city of Valoran, but Lucia. There was no wall or array to protect it. It was like an adult bullying a baby. As for his victims, murdering 2 farmers in cold blood is hardly a praiseworthy feat even for a fake divine beast. I'm sorry, boss, but what's this place? What happened to Talger? A upper asked in confusion. This is our new fortress. Under normal circumstances, Orpal would have harshly reprimanded his subject for his stupidity, but he was in too good a mood for that. When launching a full-scale attack, you must always consider the eventuality that some of us might be taken prisoners. I couldn't afford the risk that one of your fellow uppers might reveal our position, and the Awakened Council sent their army to kill us all. That's why the home stones led us to the middle of nowhere, and I told no one about this place but Salinoth. He and Uriger took care of moving everything to a new location while we were on the mission. After we escaped, I brought only those who reached the rallying point in time here with my mage tower, ensuring that no one could follow us. Smart move, boss? The upper actually wanted to curse at Orpal for his lack of trust, and leaving only the gods knew how many of his comrades stranded in Garland. Yet he knew that angering the dead king would have earned him nothing at best and death at worst. I know, but thank you for noticing, Orpal grinned. Now, what's the status on the other units, Irian? How much did we bleed that revolting fatso? If you mean Zogger Vaster, I have no clue. The Jormungandr had not taken part in the raids to not blow his cover and keep his privileged access to the awakened council channel. The dead king had entrusted Irian to keep an eye on the various 10-man upper units and warn them when council troops moved toward their position. Also, he was in charge of accounting for casualties and uppers gone missing in action. What do you mean, no clue? Orpal furrowed his brows in confusion. What about the council reports, interlink news, and the army updates? More importantly, what about our own returning troops? That's the issue. No one came back from Essagar alive. Irian's answer made Orpal's eyes widen and Jorel smirk. There is no council report because no awakened intervened on the scene. By the time the local lords arrived, the situation was already resolved. I could understand if something like this happened to Verlam. All regional capitals are fortresses filled to the brim with elite troops, and that's where the old fart lives. But an entire region? How could not a single upper survive Essagar? The dead king growled, his good mood already gone and forgot. I don't have an answer to that, Irian shrugged. All the army updates and the interlink mention a black shadow though. According to the witnesses, it descended from the sky, killed our uppers, and disappeared before anyone could see anything. Chapter 40-36 Sick Play, Part 1. A black shadow, Orpal echoed. I thought Leech was stuck in the desert. He was, the Jormungandr nodded. It wasn't Verhin, that's all I know. Phylos and Neuron were still alive when our troops in Essagar started to drop like flies. What about the damage? The dead king's nostrils flared in anger and his eyes shone with inner red light. Irrelevant, Irian replied. The uppers killed a few people and destroyed a few buildings, but nothing worth mentioning. The Essagar region will be up and running like usual in a week, tops. Fine, what about the others? Orpal calmed down only after hearing several positive reports about his army suffering little losses and inflicting widespread destruction in several regions of the kingdom. Yet he couldn't bring himself to smile. Those were all targets meaningful for his minions. He had no interest in them and considered them barely a sideshow to display his strength. Once again, Orpal's plan proved effective mostly on secondary objectives against enemies who hadn't prepared any real defensive measures, Jorel thought, but kept such a consideration to himself. I grow tired of hearing about small victories, the dead king grunted. What about the important targets, my targets? The unit sent against the White Griffin faced total annihilation as well, Irian said after a brief pause. We have no idea what happened because there are no survivors nor witnesses. How is that possible? Orpal jumped up from his throne. I sent over 100 uppers there, as many as in Lucia. One of the 6 great academies is no easy prey, you moron, Jorel inwardly scoffed. There is a reason if even Thrud's advance stopped in front of the White Griffin, and I'm ready to bet we wouldn't fare any better against it. Only those who had personally taken part in the final battle of the War of the Griffins knew the secret of the 6 great academies, and they had all sworn secrecy to ensure that no one could learn from Thrud's mistake. Even Irian knew nothing about it, since the Garland Council would never trust the awakened from Giera with such knowledge. Then tell me about Dirios, the dead king snarled. Dirios held, but half our troops returned alive, the Jormungandr replied. Only half. The stasis field surrounding the Destar household neutralized Frost's soul, and without it, even divine beasts can't hold out for long against an army of fake mages while relying only on spirit magic. The moment the uppers lost the element of surprise, it was a massacre. They could only choose between standing and dying or running and surviving. They picked the latter. Let me get this straight. Orpal looked around, realizing that half his troops were either dead or captured. Vaster is alive, the Urnas are alive, the Destar bitch is alive. With each nod he received from Irian, the dead king's fury grew. Is my unit the only one that has successfully completed its mission? Not at all, there are also the units sent to Lorien, Xantia, Gakri. I mean an important mission, Orpal snarled, cutting Irian short. Those are cities that hold key strategic relevance in future conflicts, the Jormungandr scoffed, but if all you are interested in is your revenge against your brother, then yes. Garland, Distar region, ruins of Lucia at the same time. After making sure that Falul was safe and with her Freya, Lith left Rizzle in the care of the Hydras. Not to sound ungrateful, but do you have any idea what happened to Zekel the blacksmith? He asked. No, I'm sorry, Falul sighed, sipping nutrients from a dimensional canteen. The attack started in the middle of Lucia, and by the time we arrived, we had to focus on Meln and his seconds in command. There was no time to rescue people one by one. What seconds in commands? Lith said. 2 divine beasts, a griffin and a bastet, Falul replied. It seems that Verdalac blood is like the color black, it goes well with everything. Those bastards had Meln's bloodline abilities on top of their own. We'll talk about this later. Lith had so many questions, but the only one that mattered at the moment was whether he had to deliver to Rena the news of her in-law's death and explain to the kids the reason they would never see their paternal grandparents again. Do you mind showing these holograms around, Falul? He projected the faces of Zekel and his wife, Surma. Have you thought about calling them? Solis said from the tower. Zekel's rune is still active. Fuck me sideways, I must have my head up my ass to forget about that, Lith inwardly cursed. I'm not there, and I too have my head up my ass. Solis looked at Lucia solely through the watchtower, knowing that if she shared Lith's eyes she would start to cry. A mob blamed you for this disaster and almost tried to lynch you. Cut yourself some slack, do it for the both of us please. Solis considered Lucia her birthplace. It was where she had lived since regaining her consciousness and losing all the memories of her old life. She had seen the small village grow and develop into a fine, prosperous city over time. With each one of Lith's and Solis' achievements, the business increased and more people came to Lucia. Only a handful of people knew of her contribution to Lith's feats, but Solis considered the current Lucia one of her creations. She had laid no foundation nor placed a single stone, yet she brimmed with pride every time that she walked through the bustling streets of the city. It was proof of how much 2 people could make a difference for many. Of how much she made the difference. Seeing Lucia in such a wretched state was a stab to her heart. The voices of the merchants were gone, replaced by the desperate cries of those who had lost their house, their loved ones, or both. The paved roads were covered in blood, and guts and gore covered every corner of Lucia like festoons of some savage festival. Lucia still stood, many of its citizens were still alive, yet the Lucia in Solis' heart was gone, replaced by the testament to Orpal's cruelty. Solis had never met Lith's brother as a boy. She had awakened from her slumber after his disownment and knew the young Orpal only through Lith's memories. Yet she felt responsible for the destruction he had wrought. Meln came here because of us, he's insane, but this is our fault. We should have known that something like this was bound to happen sooner or later. We should have prepared something to protect Lucia. Solis thought in a corner of her mind where Lith couldn't hear her. He already carried a heavy burden, and she didn't want to add her own. Unaware of her struggles, Lith pressed Zekel's contact rune. The blacksmith answered almost immediately. Thank the gods, I've tried to call you the gods know how many times, but this piece of junk didn't work. Zekel seemed to be in one piece, and so was Surma, his wife. The couple was covered in dirt and soot, but that was the least of Lith's worries. Chapter 40-37 Sick Play, Part 2. It's not the amulet's fault, it was Meln's doing. Where are you? The attack is over, you can come out, Lith said. For out we are out, Zekel replied. Where are you, son? Lucia is no longer a small village, we can't hope to meet just by looking around the central plaza. Lith's inability to process the obvious stunned him, further proving to Solis that he was shaken beyond what he let transpire on his face. His eyes fell on Fila's corpse and his voice trailed off. The behemoth had never been a close friend, but she had always been a trustworthy ally since Lith had joined the awakened council under Falul's tutelage. Fila had helped Lith train after he became a Tiamat and been of invaluable help in the council. Lith couldn't believe that she was gone like that and didn't want to haunt Zekel's and Surma's dreams as well with the macabre display of her demise. I'm in front of the smithy, where are you? Lith warped in front of the pile of rubble that, until a few minutes ago, had been Zekel's pride and joy. Right there, the blacksmith walked through a warp steps of his own, followed by his wife and Salman. I never thought that having a permanent house guest would one day save our lives, Zekel said while patting Salman's muscular arm. How are Renee and Senton? How are the kids? He asked. They are fine, Lith gave the Rizar a thankful nod. Meln sent his uppers in the blood desert as well, but they managed to harm only our hosts. What about you guys? I need a fresh skirt and a long bath, but I'm otherwise okay. Surma was glad that her unkempt condition hid the mark of the fear that had overwhelmed her when she had seen the ceiling crashing down on her. Same, aside from the skirt part, Zekel sighed. Salman caught us both and dived into the ground. We got a bit dirty and there wasn't much air, but we survived and that's all that matters. Lith, there's something you need to know. Salman pulled the Tiamat's arm as Brina and her parents also walked out the warp steps. After bringing the Proudhammers to safety, I came back to rescue the cornerstones. The Rizar had no idea why he had done it, but couldn't say it out loud without sounding incredibly rude. They know what I am. A hero, Brina said, her eyes sparkling like stars. Son, you saved my family. Vexel looked at the sorry state of the smithy and thanked the gods for their mercy. You could be a troll and you would still be an honored guest in my house anytime you want. Assuming I still have a house, of course. Zekel and the baker lived in Lucia ever since it was still a small village. Vexel needed but a glance to spot the smoking ruins of his family's business. What are we going to do? Surma sobbed, reality hitting her in the heart like a frozen knife. We have lost everything and are too old to start from scratch. Where will we live? How will we afford to eat? At those words, Vexel's wife fell to her knees and joined Surma in her desperate cries. You don't have to worry about that. A wave of Lith's hand warped everyone to the branch of the Mage Association where all the injured and the survivors had been brought to be treated. His demons kept scouring every corner of Lucia, slithering under the shadows of the collapsed buildings in search of survivors. The army of shadows was swift and efficient, rescuing those who were trapped and tending to the injured as soon as they were found. Lith knew of the assembly thanks to the demons of the darkness and had moved to the Mage Association because he had something to say. I want the Lucians to hear it from me, not read it from an impersonal royal decree projected by their amulets. I owe them as much, he thought. Rizzle was there as well and Falul stood by his side to protect him. The truth behind Orpal's attack spread fast and many who had lost everything didn't care about logical explanations. They only wanted someone to blame for their misery, and since Orpal was gone, Rizzle was the next best thing. People of Lucia, Lith said, drawing all eyes on himself. I'm sorry for what happened today, none of you deserved this. I'm also sorry that I couldn't be here to protect you. Know that the dead king sent his forces against me as well and did everything he could to keep me away until he was done with his petty revenge. Otherwise, I would have fought by your side and maybe things would be a bit better. What I won't do, however, is apologize for the dead king's actions. Our shared blood doesn't make me his brother more than his birth in Lucia makes him one of you, it's just an unfortunate coincidence. As you've heard from Rizzle, even if the dead king succeeded in one of his past attempts to kill me, he would have still come here to destroy Lucia. I wasn't his target and neither were you. We are just extras in the sick play he wrote for us. Lith waved at what was left of Lucia, the sight bringing many to tears and a few to their knees. That insane bastard thinks that all this is funny. Right now he's gone back hiding like the coward he is and he's laughing at us. He kept me away and Rizzle alive on purpose. He killed and destroyed because he wants to see us despair and revel in our pain. He wants us to turn on each other, just like in his deranged mind, Lucia turned on him back when he tried to kill me for the first time. Well, the dead king can go fuck himself for all I care. Lith's snarl was human, his rage kindling the fury of the Lucians that still smoldered under the tear-soaked blanket of their pain. He's taken too much from me already and I won't give him any more satisfaction. This is why I promise you that I'll do everything I can to convince the royals to provide the funds necessary for the complete reconstruction of Lucia. Lith paused, letting his words sink in, arousing hope and a healthy amount of disbelief. I won't lie to you, the chances that there is enough money for everyone are slim. The dead king ravaged the entire Griffin kingdom today. Countless people lost everything just like you, and their needs are no less important than yours. The royals have to care about their subjects equally, and giving Lucia preferential treatment would brew resentment, playing in the dead king's hands. Hope faded, leaving only disbelief in the crowd's hearts. Yet I'm not bound to the royal standards. I wasn't born in every city of the kingdom at the same time. I was born in Lucia. This is my city, my fief, and I have every right to do what I want with it. Whatever the crown can't afford, I'll pay it out of my own pocket. Lith paused again, watching hope bloom. Chapter 40, 38 Bloodlines at War, Part 1. I'm going to rebuild Lucia just as it was. The dead king struck us down today, but he hasn't killed us, Lith said. When the dead king comes back, because he will, I want him to find Lucia thriving and all of us ready to kick his sorry ass in an early grave. I want him to realize that, despite his newfound powers, he failed once again. He came here, strutting around Lucia, thinking this would be his victory parade, yet he was sent running. He forgot that Lucia has its supreme Magus and with him allies and protectors. Lith pointed at the hydras that herded the humans to the city plaza, at the wyverns patrolling the skis, and the fire dragons cleansing the land from the upper's corrupted blood with primal spark. Suddenly the Lucians felt small, and awe filled their hearts. In the chaos of battle, the only difference that mattered was ally or enemy. In the silence of the aftermath, the Lucians realized that they stood in the presence of legendary creatures that even the protagonists of their favorite bedtime stories could only dream about. I won't downplay your pain or losses. If you no longer feel safe in Lucia, you are free to leave. I will still compensate you for what the dead king has taken from you. I won't leave you empty-handed just because you don't share my vision. Many started to sob out of joy, even kneeling and joining their hands in praise to the gods. Take your time, don't rush your judgment. Whatever decision you make, be sure you won't come to regret it in the future. Lith conjured more and more demons by the second. Even as he spoke, they cleaned the streets of the blood and carried the bodies of the fallen to the Mage Association to be identified. The demons also fixed the non-critically damaged houses as best as they could with earth magic and erected temporary buildings so that no one would have to spend the night in the open. Thanks, Lith. Rizzle was the first to walk to him while the rest of the Lucians still stared at the divine beasts and marvels of magic in awe. It means a lot to me. Now I can leave with a less heavy heart. Leave, Lith echoed, and go where? This is your home. You can be my honored guest for as long as you need. I can have your house rebuilt in a few days. Thanks for your offer, but I won't change my mind. Rizzle needed to sit down. He hadn't suffered a single injury, yet there was little strength left in his body. I know you don't want Meln to win, but I've lost everything. The Lucians hate me, my parents are dead, and I'll never feel safe in my house ever again. My father died there, Lith, and I watched my mother bleed and cry while I could do nothing. No amount of gold or nice words will ever change that. I need a new house. A new place where I can live without Meln's shadow laughing at me. More importantly, I have to find Luca. I need to warn him of the danger he's in. Where is your little brother? Lith asked. It's the only information I need to bring you to him. I wish I knew, Rizzle sighed. The last time I heard from Luca, he was working as an apprentice for a traveling merchant. I know where to start looking thanks to the last letter he sent, but I have no idea of his whereabouts. Do you need help? Lith asked. Is there anything I can do? I could use the money you just promised. Rizzle lowered his eyes in shame, feeling like a beggar. I can't wait for the bureaucrats in Valoran, and the sooner I depart, the faster I can find Luca. With me gone, Meln will have one less reason to attack Lucia, and the Lucians won't have to hold their temper every time we meet. Everybody wins. If this is what you want. Lith handed Rizzle a small bag of gold worth more than Broman's house and a year's worth of father's and son's salary combined. Yet I insist you take this. Lith also took a communication amulet out of his pocket dimension, to which he added his rune. Your tablet won't work away from Lucia. Call me in case you get in trouble, you spot one of Meln's goons, or you and your brother just need anything. Luca is your family, but this is my battle as well. Rizzle's expression shifted from shame to gratitude for a few seconds before settling for resignation. "Thanks, one day I'll pay you back," he said. "I'm sure you will," Lith nodded, gesturing to one of the association's clerks to approach them. "Give this man a change of clothes and warp him wherever he wants without telling anyone. The dead king might have spies and I'm not taking any chances. I'll take full responsibility." The clerk hesitated for a second before giving Lith a deep bow, walking away with Rizzle. There were only a few doors that the white and gold uniform of the Supreme Magus couldn't open, and they were all in the royal castle of Valoran. Once Rizzle disappeared behind the door of the Mage Association, Lith checked in with Falul, Zoreth, Gerslak, and Urgek. "Thank you for everything you have done today." Lith gave them a deep bow, especially to the Wyvern Patriarch who had no reason to be there outside his council duty. "Please, don't thank me," Falul sighed, and so did Adjeter and Firwal. "I'm sorry for failing you. You warned me this would happen. I had plenty of time to prepare, yet Narchat bested me. You are my apprentice and Destar is my region. Protecting Lucia is my duty. I would have done it even if you didn't ask me." "I don't deserve your gratitude either, little brother." The shadow dragon shapeshifted into her human form. "You granted me so many blessings, you entrusted your home to me, and I wasn't up to even one of Meln's loser goons." "That's absurd," Lith dismissed the idea with a sweep of his hand. "I've defeated plenty of uppers already. I refuse to believe one of them could give someone as strong as you a run for her money." "That guy had Narchat's help, but that's no justification." Zoreth shook her head. "There are no rules in war, and if not for Gerslak, I don't know what might have happened to me. I'm in your debt, Patriarch." "Don't mention it." The Wyvern kept his Emperor Beast form, but also his head low enough to meet everyone else's eyes, not to look down on them. "You are Voltak's last disciple, and that's more than enough for me." "That said, my opponent was strong and skilled," Zoreth said, nodding at Gerslak in gratitude. "He was nothing like those other knockoff divine beasts that Narchat unleashed on Lucia. That thing overpowered one of Thrud's generals and survived against me. That's not something anyone can do." "That's not because you are lacking something, little sister. That upper was just that strong," Gerslak replied. "Under the black hide there was a real divine beast, a storm griffin." Chapter 4039 Bloodlines at War Part 2. "Are you sure?" Falul's eyes went wide in surprise. "Why would a griffin join a loser like Narchat?" "The same way a bastet would," Gerslak replied. "There was also a true divine beast from Verendi. I'm sure of it because I tasted their blood." "And so did I," Uffil nodded. "The upper that beat me up was a storm griffin. I'm certain not only because of the taste of his blood but also because of his light mastery and his use of life maelstrom." "It would explain everything," Zoreth pondered. "Damn it, there is only one explanation for my dragon eyes failing to recognize light mastery, yet Uffil's didn't," she actually thought. "Nelia's spells must be obsolete. She's not going to like this one bit." "Sure, it's possible but not plausible. I've never heard of a renegade griffin. I can't speak about the bastet, but if one of Tyrus' children went rogue, everybody would." Urgak, the patriarch of the fire dragons, hissed as he recalled a months-old rumor. "Jorl." "Who's Jorl?" Lith asked. "A young storm griffin who managed to get himself banished from the Griffin Kingdom," Urgak replied. "I remember about him only because he foolishly angered Tyrus and defied her decree multiple times before finally giving up." "How is this relevant to my situation?" Lith asked. "If that griffin is Jorl, then he's in a lot of trouble," Urgak pondered. "His bloodline will hunt him down and make him pay, no matter if they have to fight an entire army of upper to do it. Yet only if it's him and he really dared return to the kingdom, which is implausible as well. There's no hiding from the Great Mother's eye." "Actually there is," Lith said. "The Verdalac blood has some sort of cloaking power. Not even Grandma could perceive an upper's presence in the desert unless she stood in front of them, and when I say Grandma I mean Salark." "Are you sure?" Gerslak asked, obtaining a nod in reply. "That's a disturbing thought. But it also gives me a good reason to contact my griffin friends," Urgak said. "Jorl didn't defy Tyrus' decree out of homesickness or desire for atonement. He wanted to retrieve the treasures left in his lair before the defensive arrays weakened and someone stole them." If his siblings go there and find it empty, it means that we got our guy and maybe even some help. Speaking of help, what are you doing in Lucia, Urgak? Lith asked. I didn't expect to find you here more than I expected, Gerslak. You're hurting my feelings, little brother. The patriarch of the fire dragons snorted black smoke out of his nostrils. Sure, we dragons aren't as mushy as phoenixes, but how could we remain indifferent after hearing that your lair was under attack? Moreover, by creating an army of uppers, Narchet has turned his personal revenge into a conflict between two bloodlines, the Tiamats and the Verdalax. Half of your and Narchet's divine beast blood belongs to the fire dragons, little brother. Yet while you nourished and treasured it into something new worthy of the father of all dragons, the dead king twisted it into something monstrous for the sake of power. He has defiled the very essence of our clan, and that's something we can't forgive. As for me, I'm just trying to restore the honor of my bloodline, Gerslak admitted. I don't care much about you, Verhin, but getting a pound of the dead king's flesh would do wonders for the reputation of my clan. Whatever your reason is, I'm grateful for your presence, Lith nodded. I'm sorry for interrupting this lovely family reunion, but we have urgent business to attend to. Lotho the Treant barged in the middle of the conversation with a warp steps, cutting him short. With Fila dead, the Beast Council is in need of a new representative. As much as I'd love to take a few days to mourn her passing, we can't afford to have such a huge gap in the chain of command, not with the threat of Narchat's upper army looming over our head. A wave of his hand dismissed the quasi-treantlings, sending them back to the Tron woods. I agree with him, Ragu said. Don't worry about Fila, I've already collected her corpse and equipment. As her fellow representative and final comrade-in-arms, it's my duty to return her to her family. She threw Falul a long, meaningful look before turning around and warping away. What was that? Zorath asked in confusion. Trouble, Firwal sighed. Fila and my daughter were good friends. It's the only reason Fila came here in person and dragged the rest of the council representatives with her. The behemoths might hold us responsible for Fila's death, and internal conflict is the last thing we need while dealing with Narchat. Well, Loth said in annoyance, what's your answer? I politely decline. Gerslak gave the Treant a small bow. Nobody would trust a bloodline with a shady past like mine, and I have already too much on my plate to be the beast representative. I decline as well, Falul shrugged. There's too much at stake for me at the moment. She couldn't reveal that Freya had already become her harbinger, nor put Freya and her unborn bobbies in danger by taking the lead in every operation of the Beast Council. Sign me in, Firwal said, taking everyone by surprise. Only as a temporary representative, though. I don't care about the council, only about my daughter, and Narchet almost killed her today. That's not how the council works, Lotho snorted, his voice the rustling of leaves against leaves. A representative seat is a lifelong commitment, not something you drop off the moment it doesn't suit your needs any longer. In times of peace, I'd agree with you, Lotho, but this is no longer the petty squabble between two brothers. No offense, Lith, Firwal countered. None taken. This has just escalated into a full-blown war and claimed its first toll among the council elders. The Hydra continued. There is no time for the petty politics each bloodline undergoes to select their candidate, and all those ridiculous spirit duels to settle which candidate becomes the beast representative. Or rather, we can waste that, Tim. And then we will waste even more crying about the ruin that the dead king will unleash upon our land and the people will lose. Firwal pointed at Lucia, and Lotho's retort died in his trunk. In war, you need swift decisions and to act even more swiftly because time isn't measured in seconds but in lives. The less we argue, the fewer awakened will lose their lives, asking themselves why there are no reinforcements from the Beast Council. I'm the best field general anyone could ask for. I'm a veteran from the First War, I own a Royal Fortress armor, and I can get Tessa to help us, who also has a Royal Fortress armor of her own. I'll add one more condition to sweeten the deal. Bring me anyone with better qualifications than me and I'll follow their lead like a good soldier. Until you do, shut your hollow and do as I say. Chapter 40 Weak Link, Part 1. Lotho had many objections, but the more he reflected over Firwall's words, the stupider his arguments sounded even to him. Yet it was the memory of Fila's severed corpse that sealed the deal. "You make a fine point. I'll support your proposal with the council, but I can't guarantee it will be accepted or even taken into consideration. You don't have to convince us plant folk but the emperor beasts. They are going to be less receptive to your straightforward oratory and more outraged by your utter disregard for the council's traditions. I suggest that when you give them this speech, you choose your words carefully and switch to a more conciliatory tone." "Damn, you are right," Firwall groaned. "It's exactly the reason I washed my hands of the council and the kingdom for the past 700 years. I'm too old for this shit." "You are welcome," Lotho nodded. "One final warning, even if you do everything perfectly, you can still fail. There are many who are going to perceive your candidacy as an attempt to climb to the throne while Fila's corpse is still warm. Others will understand your true intentions, but they will still twist them around. Hydras are not liked much these days, and you less than anyone else. For what it's worth, I'll back you however I can." Most of the members of Orpal's army were plant folk and fae. It had created a huge scandal in the awakened community and put the entire plant race under heavy scrutiny. It was the reason Lotho was unwilling to point fingers at Lith or Firwall, hoping they would afford him the same grace. Coming to Lucia to help was also part of his attempt to show that not all fae were corrupt. It was also the reason Lotho supported Firwall's candidacy. If she won, it would be partly because of him and ease the criticism against the plant folk. If she failed, the resulting fracture between the Hydras and the rest of the Emperor Beasts would shift the focus from his faction anyway. "I assume you are not interested in the representative seat, Lith, correct?" Lotho asked. "I'm not, thank you. I have too much on my plate to take on even more work," he replied. "Meln and my children are my top priorities, albeit for completely different reasons." "As it should be." The Treant nodded at Lith and gave a polite bow to Urgak before warping away to deliver the news to the plant council. "What did he mean by Hydras aren't liked much?" Lith asked. "Do you remember when I told you that Hydras are considered among the bottom of the barrel lesser dragons?" Falul replied, the eyes of her head's only Lith could see darted at Gerslak. "Sure," the Tiamat nodded. "It means that our standing in the council is not high compared with the original lesser divine beasts like behemoths and drakes, and even lower when compared to almost divine beasts like hippogriffs and wyverns," Falul said. "After the War of the Griffins, however, we climbed straight to the top thanks to Tyrus allowing us to add Uffil to our ranks. The Harmonizer project further consolidated both our position and the grudge that came with it. Let me be clear, the other three races have always resented us beasts because we are the only ones who can ascend to guardians, who in turn can sire an endless number of powerful species. The problem is that now all four races begrudge the Hydras for being the only clan with a real shot at bridging the gap between lesser and full-blooded divine beasts. Moreover, if my mother takes the representative seat in the council, everyone else will see it as an attempt of the Hydra clan to increase also its political and military power." "I see," Lith sighed in relief. "Why are you sighing in relief?" Firwall grunted. "This is a serious matter, hatchling." "I'm sorry, I meant no disrespect." Lith raised his hands in apology. "It might sound silly, but I was afraid of being responsible for your predicament as well. No matter what Rizzle and the rest of Lucia say, what happened today is my fault." He took a few breaths of invigoration to empower his demons and give them all the strength they needed to clear the city of the debris and repair the houses that had suffered the least damage. "Oh, it is your fault, hatchling, at least partly," Firwall said, making Lith's dour expression turn dourer. "Mom," Falul yelled, "that's very insensitive of you. Lith almost lost his hometown today and he's mourning Fila's sacrifice. Can't you give him a break?" "I did, that's why I said partly." Firwall's words were met by her daughter's scornful glare. "What, it's the truth, you taking in a divine beast as your apprentice started everything. Lith's current status, his friend volunteering to become your harbinger and now Menadian helping us with the harmonizers only made everything progressively harder for us Hydras. The part about Baba Yaga's and Silverwing's involvement was still a secret, and so was the chance that the method to achieve dragonhood developed by the hydras might work for all lesser divine beasts. Mom, I see, Lith nodded, feeling not one bit guilty. Don't worry, Falul, Freya's choice is her own, and if the other Emperor beasts envy our friendship, they only have themselves to blame. Had they treated me as well as you did today, I'd help them as well. It's too easy to cry injustice in hindsight after you took all the risks and now finally reap the benefits of your investment. That's an incredibly shallow and opportunistic way to put it, Lith, Falul snarled at him. I never saw you as an investment, or I would have exploited the 100 years apprenticeship rule. I helped you because I wanted to. I know, and I'm even more grateful for that, Lith replied. If there's nothing else, I'll join my demons. There is a lot to do. The emergency is resolved and our injured have already recovered. The wyverns offer their help, Gerslak said. And so do the hydras, Firwall stepped in front of Falul. Truth be told, the hydras had suffered quite a few casualties and many of them wanted nothing more than go away and grieve. Yet with the council seat at stake and the wyverns meddling, Firwall considered it a competition. And the fire dragons, Urgek rolled his eyes, his voice oozing unwillingness. He wasn't involved in the council's politics, but being the only one to bail on his little brother while everyone else offered a hand would have painted the fire dragons as cold-hearted jerks. Thanks to the help of so many powerful creatures, it didn't take long to erase most of the traces of Orpal's attack. The awakened spotted the remains of the fallen with life vision and restored the corpses as best as they could with necromancy before returning them to their families. Tons of debris could be moved at a time by storing them inside dimensional amulets. Healing and tending the survivors was even faster thanks to invigoration and the fire dragon's massive size. One of their snacks was enough to feed the entire city, after being properly cooked, of course. Chapter 40 1 Weak Link, Part 2. Lith let the living take care of the living, focusing the efforts of his demons on repairs and building temporary houses. What a disaster! Menadian didn't like being away from Solus, but after the relief efforts had started and Menadian had shown no interest in helping, her daughter had started to glare at her with the intensity of an ice age. You don't say? Lith scoffed, using invigoration to scan the wreckage of a half-collapsed house to understand what went where before fixing it with earth magic. By the way, thanks for joining us. There's no reason to be rude, kid. I'm here now and that's all that matters, Menadian grunted before muttering, not that I had much of a choice anyway. What did you say? Solus asked telepathically. Here goes nothing, Menadian rushed to say as she struck a house with her fury. Instead of crushing the wall, the Davros hammer produced a silvery sound that reverberated through the air. Menadian's mana formed a magic circle around the house, connecting it with its debris via countless blue tendrils. Small and big pieces of stone floated off the ground, finding their original place before fusing with the house. Alas, some of the pieces had been scattered by either the wind or the fight, leaving several gaps in the structure. Apologize with the royals on my behalf, kid. Menadian hit an already broken stone block in the road, pulverizing it. Pebbles and dust flew into the gaps and filled them until only the difference in color betrayed the house's repair. A second swing of the hammer fixed the roof, but many tiles were missing. I can't do anything about that, Menadian sighed. That's going to cost you a bit of money and a roofer, Lith. What? How can you be this quick? He asked in disbelief. He was still scanning the debris, while Menadian was already moving on to another house. Didn't you create the self-repair enchantments for your home? She replied. Of course I did. It's the same thing, Menadian shrugged. Just add a spell that analyzes the structure of the house, mirrors the missing parts, and allows you to set the parameters for what you can't mirror. Easy peasy. No, it's not, Lith grunted. Sorry, I forgot I'm the resident genius forgemaster. Menadian imparted her spell to him via the black chains. Mom, don't be a jerk, Solus rebuked her. First, Lith is still shaken. Second, he's a great forgemaster. The only difference between you and him is that he's 20 with no mentor and you are over 300 and studied under Aunt Loka. So many words just to say I'm the better forgemaster. Menadian telepathically clicked her tongue. Mom, either you start to behave or I'll use the O word. Not that I'm not old. Meanwhile, it took Lith the time of that mind link to convert Menadian's old runes into modern ones and then adapt them to his own Forgemastering spell. Thanks, Rifa, much appreciated. Do you mind if I share it with the other demons? Well, Mom, this is my final warning. Of course not, Menadian said, as long as they promise to keep it to themselves. In the blink of an eye, most of Lucia was back to its previous state except for the roof tiles. The fire dragons took particular care of the Voidfeather dragon's statue, making it stand out above all others for its craftsmanship. I never thought the day would come when I'd be happy our tavern is in a dead part of Lucia, Ashek, the owner of the Drinking Wolf, said. I told you it was the Great Mother's grace shining on us, Hida, his wife, replied. First, we met Supreme Magus Verhin, then he advertised your beer, and now this. She pointed at the sign depicting a seated wolf drinking beer that was hung outside the unscathed tavern. Not one brick was broken nor a tile missing. If not for the upper stomps causing a few glasses and plates to fall to the ground and break, the Drinking Wolf Tavern would have suffered no damage. Orpal had ordered his minions to leave Lith's house alone, so no one had bothered with that part of the outskirts of Lucia. You're right, Hida, Ashek nodded. Let's share the Great Mother's blessing with the others. I bet there are lots of people who could use a warm meal and a cold drink. Thanks for staying behind, Falul said while healing 7 people at a time in her hybrid form. I've heard your turf has been heavily hit as well. It's not a big deal. Ajatar was still recovering from the blade spell. Even shrunk in a human-sized form, he looked emaciated. The other regional lords are covering for me, and it's not like I have friends who need me there. And here you do, she asked in puzzlement. You heard your mother-in-law, though, Ajatar replied while conjuring a quick hush spell. If you Hydras want to get that seat in the council, you need a trump card, me. What do you mean? As you said, my region and all others have been hit, the Drake sighed. Hard, we can't afford a long internal squabble while Narchat keeps killing us like flies. I refuse to let the Emperor Beasts become the weak link in the council. Not when I can fix everything with a single move. All I have to do is get back to work and finish my research on dragonhood. If I succeed, the rest will fall into place by itself. That's ambitious and very risky, Falul narrowed her eyes. Are you sure this is what you want to do? I'm sure, he nodded. If I become a dragon, no one among the Emperor Beast will have a reason to resent you Hydras and will start fawning over you. It will prove that you aren't keeping the Harmonizer research for yourselves and allow the other lesser divine beasts already involved in the project to step forward. Once they reveal that anyone can benefit from the Harmonizer, things will get much easier for your mother, especially with a new dragon coming from another bloodline. If you think about it, your delay due to Freya's pregnancy is a blessing in disguise. Had you turned into a dragon, giving 2 new divine beasts' bloodlines to the Hydras, there would be no turning back at this point. Now, instead, I can balance things out, and while everyone will focus on trying to learn my secret, they won't have time or reasons to oppose Firwall's candidacy. It's indeed an excellent plan, but it puts you in a bad spot, Falul replied. You only have one shot at this and you can't rush something so important. What makes you think you can complete your research in time without endangering your own life? I have my ways. Ajatar weaved at the too many prying eyes and ears, and despite the hush zone protecting their privacy, he refused to say more. Blood Desert Starry Lagoon Village, a few hours later. I'm deeply ashamed of my incompetence and can only ask for your forgiveness. Salark gave the Verhins and the Merfolk representatives a deep bow. You are all my guests and I'm your host under the sacred laws of hospitality. Chapter 40-42 Child of Fire, Part 1. I was supposed to take care of you and protect you from all danger. Instead, I fell for the dead king's ploy and left you at the mercy of his thralls. Every dead merfolk is an indelible stain on my honor, and I won't rest until I'll make it up to your tribe. Please, there's no need for apologies, Overlord, Rem said. You've done everything you could to ensure our safety. Our village is protected by powerful arrays, and we had 2 divine beasts with us. With your land under attack from multiple fronts, it was only natural for you to deal with the invaders. Lord Verhin, his sister, and his friends did everything they could for us. The only merfolk they failed to save are those killed by the merchants turned uppers, and only because we had come to trust them so much over time that we lowered our guard around them. The other two uppers didn't so much as come close to the Starry Lagoon oasis. Almost all the desert tribes had endured a similar outcome. The trader merchants had killed a few people before being neutralized by the local feathers. The number of casualties never reached the 2 digits, but every corpse was one too many for the Overlord. Thank you for your kind words, Representative Rem, but they change nothing. I've failed in my duties as host, Salark replied. I wouldn't blame you if you want to move your village to another oasis or even relocate to a different country. That's out of the question, Overlord, Jur the songster said. We've already crafted the desert heart for the Starry Lagoon oasis, and this is our home now. We won't leave unless you order us to. Besides, no matter where we go, danger will always follow. We feel much safer here with such a graceful host than anywhere else on Garland. You honor me with your words, songster Jur. Salark gave him a polite nod. As for you, Featherlings, I'm sorry about what happened to Lucia and ruining your vacation. If there's anything I can do for you, all you need is ask. Thanks for the offer, Grandma, but it's not necessary, Lith said. We'll go back to Lucia first thing in the morning. I can't afford to be so far away with Meln still at large. The problem was actually another. Lith might have tower warped straight to the Tron Woods right after killing the uppers if only he hadn't had to explain to his friends why the house would disappear along with him. Once he brought Ryla and Garrick back to the mansion and the rest of his guests to Lucia, instead, the tower would be free to move again. The doors of my palace are always open for you and your family, Featherling, she nodded. Feel free to return whenever you like or need. At dinner, everyone had regained their cool with one exception. I can't wait to go back home, Garrick shuddered at the memory of the attack. This place is terrifying. He means no disrespect, Overlord. Ryla bowed so deeply that her long, dark blue hair touched the floor. Garrick never witnessed a real fight. His condition kept him sheltered from the real world, and he has little knowledge of its dangers. I'm not offended, and you shouldn't apologize, Salark replied. A child has every right to be scared when someone breaks the safety of his house. Garrick would be foolish otherwise. It's how he behaves next that matters. Teach him well and grow him into a wolf who can keep his turf safe, or he'll become a turtle who hides in his shell. Was that scary? Fenrir asked in honest confusion. She wasn't trying to belittle Garrick. It was just that between the stories her sibling told her and seeing her parents always cold and collected, she had assumed being attacked by uppers was something normal. Nah, that's small stuff, furball, Laren shrugged. The undead courts attacking us in the middle of the night, that was scary. Or that time a bunch of assassins ambushed us while we were playing in front of our house, Lilia nodded. Those uppers were amateurs, they didn't even get close to us. Lilia, Laren, Celia blushed up to her ears. You are making it sound like you live in a war zone. But Mom, not even Salkar is afraid. Laren pointed at the youngest Skull, who barked at his mother with pride, demanding a feast worthy of a warrior of his caliber. I swear to the gods, one day you guys are going to drive me crazy. Celia sighed, forcing the pup to shapeshift into a baby boy before feeding him. No offense, Auntie, but they are right. Aaron stirred his stew with a spoon, not knowing how to feel. Also, it's kind of sad that we got used to this kind of thing. And we are the lucky ones, Lyria said. Philia and Frey have been kidnapped so many times that now they close their eyes and ears before Uncle Tezca can say anything. Are you serious? Camilla jumped from her seat. It's not a big deal, sis Kami, Aaron shrugged. Uncle Tezca is always with them. The average kidnapping lasts about 3 seconds. Yeah, and he lets them eat all the ice cream they want once they get back home, Lyria nodded. Philia and Frey kind of look forward to it. They do what? Camilla asked in disbelief. Does Zin know about this? I guess, Aaron cleared his throat, exchanging a quick glance with Lyria. When is our turn, Mommy? Lennart tugged Rena's arm. With a bit of luck, never. Seeing their children so unfazed made Alina and Rena inwardly wonder if they were doing their job as parents properly. But Mom, I want to stuff myself with ice cream, Falco said. At Grandma's, sure. At home, I want steaming fries, Tyrion said, and her siblings nodded. It's cold there already. Ho, 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 Zekel and Surma had followed Lith to the desert. Seeing you so happy and calm is a balm for my old heart. After what I went through today, I think I deserve a lot of ice cream. Can I share it with them, Lith? Sure, Lith nodded, always keeping an eye on his parents. Unlike the children, they knew of Broman's and Lisa's deaths. Orpal had killed two of their oldest and dearest friends, and that alone would have been enough to deal a heavy blow to his parents' hearts. Yet Orpal had also ravaged Lucia, the Griffin Kingdom, and the Blood Desert. Elena and Roz felt responsible for every crime their son committed and every person he murdered, wondering what they could have done differently. Was disowning Meln the right thing to do, or should I have tried harder to make him see reason? Roz thought. Yet if I didn't send him away after he almost killed his 5-year-old brother, wouldn't that have reassured Meln that he had nothing to fear? Talking never worked. He listened to me because he had to, but didn't care about one word I said and went back to his old behavior as soon as he thought he had gotten away with it. Chapter 40-43 Child of Fire, Part 2. Discipline didn't work either. Any punishment would only make him angrier. What if he tried again? Even worse, what if the next time he succeeded? And even if he didn't, with what face could I have looked my other children in the eyes? Rinna, Lith, and Tista would have felt unsafe in their own home. As Roz was lost in thought, the small and battered figure of Lith from almost 16 years ago flashed in front of Roz's eyes. He was covered in blood with bruises all over his small face. He had lost several milk teeth that day, giving him an even more wretched appearance. Then Lith's bloody figure was replaced by Roz's own. He saw himself chained to a wooden table in the Hogum mansion, with bloody stumps where his arms and legs were supposed to be. A cold sweat covered Roz's skin, and he needed sheer willpower to keep himself rooted in the present. I did the right thing? He clenched his teeth, pushing back the memories of Orpal's tortures. I don't know what went wrong with him, but Meln was rotten from the start. I didn't turn him into the dead king, nor did Night. It was always inside of Meln, and if I didn't kick him out, someone would have gotten hurt. At that point, I would have been as responsible as he for refusing to face reality. As for Night, she enabled Meln. She gave him everything he needed to escape the consequences of his cruelty, bringing his true nature to the surface. There was nothing Alina and I could do, and Tryon is proof of it. He envied Lith all his life and resented us for disowning his beloved big brother, but he never hurt anyone. He became a drill sergeant, a reliable older brother for his cadets and a brother-in-arms to his comrades. And when Night came for him, he turned her down. Roz turned to look at his son, who was having dinner with the rest of the family. She killed him, Night killed my boy, and Meln still dared bond with her. That was the last straw that silenced Roz's conscience. Not the suffering or mutilations that Meln had inflicted upon him, but Meln's indifference to the fate of the only sibling he had always claimed to love. Are you all right, Dad? Tryon returned Roz's gaze and noticed how pale his father had become. Yes, son, thank you. Roz cleared his throat, trying to sound normal. I'm just shaken from what happened to Lucia. About that, I noticed that many among Big Brother Lith's friends have similar-sounding names, Aaron pointed out. I mean Voltak, Urgek, Gerslak, they all end in ak, just like Ral. Because the ak suffix means of dragon in Dragontongue, and adding it is considered auspicious when choosing a name for a baby, Ligaen explained. But Gerslak is a wyvern, Lyria furrowed her brows. Indeed, but they still carry my blood. Also, their greatest ambition is to become dragons, Ligaen replied, avoiding mentioning the inferiority complex that plagued the wyvern bloodline and its common arrogance. What about Auntie Zorith? Aaron asked. Why didn't you name her Zorak? Just because something is auspicious, it doesn't mean that everyone should use it. Otherwise, my children would all have names so similar that distinguishing them would be nigh impossible, Ligaen replied. Also, there is more than one auspicious suffix in Dragontongue. I named your Auntie Zorith, which means Scion of Fire, to honor both her bloodlines and not make her feel forced to embrace mine over her mother's. Yet she discarded my blood and became an abomination, the guardian inwardly sighed. And now that I think about it, the same happened to Azith. Maybe Aaron is right and I should have called her Zorak. Wait, are you telling me that TH means of fire? Lyria asked, and Ligon nodded in reply. Like Uncle Lith. The guardian choked on his food at the realization and started to cough wildly. Maybe I should ban the TH suffix, Ligon thought, needing several glasses of water to calm down. 3 out of 3 dealing in abomination powers is more than a coincidence, it's a curse. No, sweetie, that's not what Lith means. Alina was glad of the silly question that distracted her from her worries. The name we had originally chosen for your uncle was Strata, which means brave and strong. Yet after he was born, Nana claimed that he was blessed by the light, so we changed his name in Lith, which means child of light. Alina avoided mentioning the complications at birth, not wanting to scare the kids. Child of light, Lith echoed as he almost choked on his food as well. Why have I never heard about this before? Because aside from a parent, no one really cares about the meaning of a name, Alina chuckled. Do you know what my name means, or that of anyone else in the family for that matter? Actually, no, Lith rubbed his chin. Before Kami got pregnant with Elijah, I never really cared about names, even mine. I rest my case, Alina nodded, taking her victory with grace. Grandpa. Aaron looked at Ligon. Is Mom right? Yes and no. The guardian cleaned his mouth with a napkin and put the fork down. Yes, Lith means child of light in Tyrus universal language. No, because Auntie Tyrus took a few words from my dragon tongue. Lith actually means child of fire. She slightly altered its meaning to remove the part about the potentially destructive nature of fire and emphasize its aspects as a source of warmth and radiance. Everyone turned to look at Tyrus, who just said, "He's right." This isn't fair. Why is Big Brother the only one with a dragon name? Aaron pouted. Can I change my name in Arak, please? If you want to be known as Meal of Dragon, sure, Ligon nodded. Mom, how could you call me like that? Aaron's eyes misted with tears as he stared at his mother as if she had betrayed him. That's not what it means. Alina became beet red in embarrassment. Aaron means heaven's blessing. Which is how we dragons call our favorite dishes, Ligon replied. What about me? Lyria asked, too afraid of hearing an even more ridiculous meaning for her own name to mock Aaron's. What does Lyriac mean? Lyria of Dragon, Ligon shrugged. As I said, Tyrus picked a few words from Dragon Tongue, not the entire vocabulary. Lyria is not among them. Mom, Lyria pouted, how could you be so mean to me? How was I supposed to know Dragon Tongue? Renat tried to defend herself. Also, why are you blaming me? What about your father? Well said, baby girl, know that it's all your mother's fault. Sentin didn't hesitate 1 second to throw Renat under the bus. You'll pay for this, she muttered under her breath. You wound my heart, featherlings, Salark sighed. You all care for your names in Old Lizard Tongue and didn't even bother to ask about Phonics Tongue. Does it exist? The room went into an uproar. What does my name mean? The children raised their voices louder and louder, trying to speak over the others and get their answer. Chapter 44 Invisible Wounds, Part 1. Enough with names, please. Lith raised his hand, gesturing for silence. I have an announcement to make, and so does Freya. Since the two things are related, I'll let Freya go first. Thank you, Lith. Freya stood up, giving him a nod. After what happened today and the pressure that the royal court is inevitably going to put on my parents in the aftermath, Nalrond and I have decided to set a date for our marriage. Her words were met with cheers and applause. Everyone took turns to congratulate the couple. I wish I shared your enthusiasm, but our choice is more practical than romantic, she sighed. Having another light master in the family will strengthen the Erna's position in court, and so will the announcement of my twins. On top of that, between my pregnancy and Quilla's, the royals will have an easier time showing our parents' leniency. Our situation gives the royals a perfect excuse to extend my parents' leave of absence. Officially, they won't be unruly subjects of the crown who refuse to resume their duty, but future grandparents who need to take care of their daughters and protect them from the threat of Narchat. Also, her voice trailed off as she clenched her hands. Freya's voice refused to form the rest of the words, so Nalrond did it for her. Also, by becoming a part of the Erna's family, I can start accumulating merits and ease the pressure on Gianni and Orion. He took Freya's hand in his own, caressing it with his thumb. If you need a hand against Melnlith, please call me. Any meritorious act I perform will help my family and allow Freya to stay away from the battlefield. She's not as compromised as Quilla, but I'd rather not put the Bobbies at risk unless it's absolutely necessary. Thanks for not calling me bloated, Quilla thought, incapable of stopping herself from devouring her fifth steak. You can count on me as well, Lith. Morok raised his hand. I'm not letting Quilla go anywhere dangerous until the twins are at least 6 months old. At that point, we can discuss the timeline of her return to active duty. Quilla glared at him, her mouth too full to speak. Morok simply glared back, brooking no argument. I will count on you too then, Lith nodded, Nalrond. Just one last thing, the Agni said. I wanted to thank Sulman personally for saving so many people in Lucia today and invite him to the marriage. Are you sure? Sulman had followed Surma and Zekel to the desert but sat at a lonely end of the table, not wanting to intrude on the family matters. I mean, thanks. I'm sure. Nalrond pinched his nose, his demeanor contradicting his words. We are the last 2 members of the Rizar village and should stick together. Also, I need someone to fill my side of the aisle. I don't have relatives and most of my friends will sit on Freya's side. I don't want to repeat what happened to Morok's wedding, so feel free to bring a date with you, Sulman. A date at a marriage? The Rizar swallowed hard, knowing how such an invitation could be easily misunderstood. And what happened during my marriage exactly? Morok grunted. I was willing to lend you a few people from Zelex, but if that's how you feel. First, they are people, you can't toss them around like candies, Nalrond grunted back. Second, your side of the aisle was filled with strangers who only knew you as Gleemo's son. We are not many, Uncle Nalrond, but we can make noise for 1,000 people, Lilia said, puffing her chest with pride, and we'll sit on the groom's side. And that's what worries me, he replied, patting the girl's head. Please don't be quiet during the ceremony, all of you, especially you, Fenrir. Why, what did I do wrong? The little girl whined. Because you howl at the top of your lungs for the smallest thing, Nalrond said, and everyone in Fenrir's family nodded, even Salkar. What about Salkar? He does that too, she growled at the puppy, who put his best indignant expression in response to the wild yet accurate accusation. He's a baby, Nalrond replied. We can put him in the hushed crib if he starts acting out. Do you want to stay in the crib with the toddlers? You wouldn't dare, Fenrir gasped in horror. I'm over 3 years old, I'm a grown-up now, I don't belong with the milk suckers. Bah, Elijah scoffed. Enough, please, Lith stood up, putting an end to the childish squabble before it escalated further. During the wedding, I'll take the royals aside and show them my Indech form. Tista, Elijah, and Kami will do the same. Are you sure about this? Roz asked. What about the element of surprise? Won't you lose it if the royals decide to go public about it? I'm not sure, but at this point, it's the best move, Lith replied. Tista and I already revealed our evolved human form to fight Meln's thralls, and there is no telling if more uppers were keeping an eye on us. Worst case scenario, they witnessed the whole thing and ran away once they realized they couldn't stall us any longer. Meln might know about our Indech form, but has no idea what it does since swirling wind has no visible effect. Best case scenario, no one saw anything. Either way, I can reveal my human form to take the wind out of Meln's sails while losing little advantage. Whether he had upper spy on us or not, everybody knows about the potential of my human side since the fight with Rugat. By displaying the Indech, I will just confirm what everybody already suspects. Tista, Kami, and Elijah will be living proof that the human bloodline can be passed down and is not exclusive to me. I don't intend to showcase any power so that even if Meln already knows, I'll leave him in the dark along with everybody else. How will that mess with Meln's plans, sweetie? Alina asked. I can't mess with his plans because I don't know what he's going to do next, Mom, Lith replied. What I can do is ruin the morale of his troops and make the young awakened less eager to join his side. After all, Meln is nothing without his uppers, and unlike Thrud, he can't force anyone to do his bidding. He needs people who willingly accept his blood and fight his battles. And how is revealing the existence of your in-detch form supposed to change their minds, son? Roz asked. Wouldn't it be better to showcase its abilities? Those who choose to follow Meln do it for the sake of power, Dad. They want to become divine beasts, and knowing Meln's ego, I'm sure he claims to be as strong as I am, if not even stronger. The in-detch form will prove that my Tiamat bloodline has access to all its components and is superior to the sum of its single parts. At that point, the human council will support me as much as the beasts because my bloodline holds the secret to unlock human evolution.